Dennis?
Here.
Dick?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
And myself, John Hope.
Okay, I'd like approval of the minutes of the last month's meeting. Oh, here it is. July 24th, 1 p.m.
I'll make a motion to approve with this along with one correction.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the old business is the discussion we had about removal of trees, and I think John has talked to both of these guys, so I'm going to let you move ahead and tell you what we have here.
Okay. You have, I'm gonna give, Kevin, I'm gonna give you, you say you don't have Hooters?
Hooters, yeah. Got it. Do you have another Hooters?
I got one left, I think. Dick, do you have the number?
No.
I don't know, I only made 3 copies, I don't know why.
Well, let's take an out when we come time to do
Yeah,
that. We
let's just
can,
share it.
let's see, are we?
Test your vision today.
Smile like town manager, that's all I need.
We asked for bids from Ugly Truck and Hooters, and the third one we asked was
the tree service that we plant the trees.
Yeah, it was
Dogwood Hills.
Dogwood Hills.
Yeah.
Dogwood Hills.
And Dogwood Hills does not do that type of work. They're more into a nursery planting. So we got the 2 back from Ugly Truck and Hooters. And Ugly Truck gave us a bid on, I think it was 13 trees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 14 trees. And they came up with a bid of $13,100, which would include grinding the stump and brush, and they would leave certain size woods, and they would haul the grindings away, and that was it. They cut up some of the wood in certain lengths, and so they were at 13.1. Ugly Truck gave us a bid of 14.6, but there's some, not discrepancies, but just because we didn't have the correct information. Now, this 13.1 does not include the $900 for 435 Lake. There was 2 trees there that were in the parkway that Hooters took out, and it was $900. So if you make everything equal here, that would bring theirs up to 14,000. Now the problem on both these lists is 408 Plymouth. 408 Plymouth, and I believe it's my error. I don't know where I got this, but there was a silver maple that we had down that was supposed to be a 9.5-foot truck. Well, Ugly Truck came up with a $1,200 amount on that. Hooters could not find a tree. I went back with them, and they're really, on that block, there is not a 9-foot trunk and a silver maple at that address. That's an error. So the 401, the only tree that looked like it was worth coming down, Hooters said it was 3.5-foot trunk and it would be $500. So my suggestion, going back over that block, and Mike Stallings and I went back over the block, we really didn't feel there was a tree in that much of a distress on that block that needed to come down. So we should subtract 408 Plymouth from the list. If everybody agrees. Should I make a motion to subtract?
I think, yeah, I think we have to, next go around on this, figure out which tree needs to go in there, so we need to think those numbers out.
I'd like to make a motion to subtract 408 Plymouth because it's not correct on either list.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. Now, when Hooters toured the area and checked out trees, he added one to the list, which was 614 North Plymouth. It's a silver maple that you said was had a big hole in the trunk with a lot of carpenter ants, and he thought that that would come down, should come down. And he gave us a price of $1,500. Ugly Truck did not see that tree, so it's not on their list. But if we add amount apples to apples, give them the same price, so we came up with that amount. The other tree in question, there's a tree at 216 Winfield. It's a huge maple. It's covered with poison ivy at the base, and it reaches out over the house's roof. And we should consider that coming down.
That's not the one, number 9 on the
No,
list.
it's not on the list at all.
I think we should deal with, we need to consider that one. It's loaded with poison ivy. And it's at a point where it's gonna start lifting sidewalk and curb. But we didn't, in our original tree inventory here, we didn't include anything over there. So I think what we need to do is decide on the rest of these trees. And if we do what John said, correct me if I'm wrong, John, we'd have to take out from Ugly Truck $1,200.
Right.
And we'd have to take out from Hooters $2,000. And the way I add it up, it comes out to $14,510 versus $14,800. The gist is that these two are apples for apples. I mean, I think both of them are right in the same ballpark. Where it wouldn't make any difference if we do one versus the other for price. However, I think John has talked to both of them, and I want to make a statement before we do this. That $900 that where those two were removed on Lake Street, that was at the request of the superintendent that builds our houses, our own employee. They couldn't get water and utilities in without that. Plus, they want to proceed to do concrete and everything else. So whatever you vote for and whatever you decide to do, I'm going to recuse myself from voting because it's my company that removed this. So, and Hooters had already given them a bid of $900 to do both trees. And so we put Ugly Trucks in at $900, which would be the same amount, so it would be apples for apples. So John, you want to talk about the individuals that you talked to?
Yeah, the other thing, well, Dick had requested the bids, and then he and I both talked to Ugly Truck on the phone, and they were very professional, and they were ready with their bid, and they said that they would email me the numbers, and they also emailed me the certificate of liability insurance. And as I said, they were very professional. They do a lot of work in Rochester. The three of us met with Bill Bailey at Hooters over in the park when he got finished with his numbers. And he was very flexible in what he could do for us. One of the things was cutting the logs in certain lengths, digging down past the dirt line, 8 inches instead of 6 inches. He could start pretty much as soon as possible. As far as payment, he's very flexible. He can take them all down, get build next year if we wanted to do that. So, and he's done a lot of work here in town, and he knows the area, and people have done work with him prior, and he would certainly be a good candidate. So right now, it's just, we got the two companies. I think we should probably make a vote and decide Hooters or Ugly Truck. The numbers are very, very comparable. And it's just a matter of who can be more accommodating to what we have to offer as far as our budget and payment and getting the work done.
It appears that they're pretty equal on the services they'll provide, about how deep they'll go with the stump grinding and brush removal. I mean, are we pretty balanced there? Does it look like?
Standard is 6 inches. We did not go back to Ugly Truck to see if they do 8 inches or see if there was an extra fee for that. When Bailey was here, we just asked if he would do that, and he said yes, he would. I'm assuming Ugly Truck would do the same thing. And there was no extra charge for Hooters.
Any other questions?
If we add well, the only thing, we have these 2 trees in question, if we want to add them to the list, and we'll bring the total up, or just consider these, we've got 12, but the 2 are already out, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 if we want to add an additional 2. We need to put those in some kind of a approval.
Mike, you've added and subtracted all the trees that are or aren't and everything else, and it still comes out just about a wash. Is that it with?
Yeah, in question were 2 trees that were, we weren't sure which tree they were talking about. One was 408 South Plymouth, and the other one was written in here at 614 North Plymouth that needed to go. Now, I think that was Hooters that wrote in there and said that was a bad tree cut, it was eating up my ants and everything else.
Right.
But we didn't have that in our original survey, so he put in $1,500 for that tree. A good truck didn't put anything in.
They didn't have it.
So in order to equal this thing out, we need to subtract. We can go back and do what we want to do. By the way, we've got these bids. If we take these 2 trees out, or one is $14,510 and the other one's $14,800. So we're within $300 of each other. But we can add to what we want to do at another date if we want to do that. In other words, this was the beginning of what I think is going to be an ongoing tree removal, because I think the more we ride around town and look at these things, the more we find trees that we think should be surveyed. So we need to get this thing started so we can come back with, and that's another thing we're going to do in new business, is what we want to do with the rest of the budget. We have, if you remember, we have $12,000 in our budget this year, and we hope we have at least $12,000 in our budget next year. But when does the town?
Our official budget hearing is the next meeting, so it's been advertised at that amount.
It's been advertised at $12,000. So we technically have $24,000 to spend. So if we go ahead and do this without these 2 trees, let's leave these 2 trees out for a minute because we're comparing apples for apples. We're within $280 or $310, one or another. But these trees are going to cost us something in the range of $14,500. to do these trees that we asked about. So we have, between this year and next year, we have 12 and 12, we have $24,000. So we have approximately $10,000 to do something with trees next year. And I'm getting into new business, but maybe we need to talk about that if we're going to make this decision. So just for purposes, let's assume that we have $10,000 left in next year's budget that we want to do. The question is, do we want to replant the stuff we take out first? Or do we want to take some more trees out and then move into the latter part of next year, or even the following year, planting trees? We keep looking and we keep finding more and more bad product. That's a problem. So we have it, right now it looks like about $10,000 we could use next year if we wanted to do all trees over and above these. Once we get these out, we still have $10,000 left that we could do something with the way through. And that again is, you know, at the tree commission's whim, so whatever we want to do it. Let's go back a second. I think right now we need to decide which the two companies we want to use. One is, if we take these two trees, one is 14,510, the other is 14. Hooters is 14,510, and New Truck is 14,8. So they're, as far as dollars and cents are concerned,
Now, I know Bob Porter mentioned us grinding the stumps to 8 inches below grade. We know Hooters will do that. Do we know if Buckley Truck will do that?
we don't know for sure.
Okay.
I assume that their standard is 6 inches, we'd have to ask them if they would, and then we, I don't know if there's an extra charge for that or not.
We can't even decide this based on names of the companies, because they both have two of the great names of all times for tree removal, so that's even a wash, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't get any free lunch that you know where.
No.
Well, let's do, my suggestion would be, let's vote based on the information we have of the company. And then make another vote after that to say, do we want to keep 2021 for tree removal, or 20 and part of 21 for tree removal and planting? I think some of the areas that these trees are coming out, you're not going to put another tree there to begin with. And they're in small parkways, they're big trees that need to come out because they're heating the street and the sidewalk, and you're not going to replace them with another tree there anyway. My opinion would be, let's take care of the brunt of this for 2021 on tree removal and see where we're at next summer and fall for tree planting.
And when I think the people are saying the activity of removing, what we agree with, there's gonna be other people that we probably overlook their tree, or they got a good, so that list is gonna get.
Well, I've already received a couple of calls. As an example, on Lake Street, the tree that came down on top of the house, the guy next door to the south called and said he'd like to get his tree taken out. And if you look closely at it, it probably needs to come out. It's, you know, it's an accident looking for a place to happen as soon as the wind blows on it. So, you know, I don't think we'd have any problem eating up our budget, if you will, taking trees out. And we've got a lot more of these bad old trees to get out of here. These, particularly these overgrown silver maples.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are.
If we wanted to plant next year and had 10 grand left, Dogwood Hills required, I think, a minimum of 7 at one time. That may be different. We could do a little bit of removal next year, but not very much.
We could,
if we wanted.
We can split that up too. But I did talk to them, and typically what we have been doing is figure about $350 a tree, and what that comes out to is about $200 for the tree and $150 for the planting and the cleanup and everything they do around it. So in order to come this distance, what they like to have is a truckload, which is about 25 trees. So that's somewhere in the range of about $8,000. So for them to come and do a planting, they won't, they really kind of hedged on coming with a half truckload and things
No
like
pun
that.
intended.
Yeah. It's you know, they bring the people, they bring the equipment and everything else,
Yeah.
and they don't use it. So they
Yeah.
can, with the gang they've got, they can do 25 trees in a day and go home and spend a hard day. You know, you've been there, Dennis, John's been there, Nick's been there, Kevin, these guys are super. But I think we need to have something like $8,000.
Right.
So I would offer something too, honestly. We're gonna go in the fall, we're not gonna, we've already said we're not gonna plant this year. But if we need to really target what we're gonna do and stick to it versus, well, maybe we can use some for this and some for that. And you mentioned last time meeting, you wanted to get some of the corrugated stuff. And why don't we take what we need to take down and repair what we need to repair and skip the planting till 2022?
Yeah, we
Don't
can
even
easily
think,
spend
don't
the
even
money,
think about
yeah.
planting. And, you know, we got some young blood here, Dick and I, we talked about getting together and do stuff, but we have to buy the stuff, get a date, and just go out and do it. Otherwise, another year will go by, and we wish we would have done it, but we didn't do it, because we're thinking about, oh, we need to plant, we need to do this or that. Let's repair what we got, or fix what we got with these corrugated things and these guards, and spend the rest of the money on removal for 2021.
Well, it's gonna take some extra dollars, let's say on the larger trees, because you're gonna have a big hole in a very vulnerable place. But, the cleanup, they say in here, 2 hours after pruning, you know, for cleanup, for this book.
We're not screwing though, all we're doing is
That's
taking
what I
a.
was just thinking of the cleanup time that they assign. So they're gonna get it cleaned up, the stuff's gonna be hauled off and all, but we still have that big hole in it.
Yeah, Bob's guys have always done that.
It's gonna be, subject to somebody twisting an ankle or something for 2 years if we do this new plan in, 21. Or if we wait for 22.
Well, we're not gonna plant a tree in the hole that the tree came out of.
No.
So
We
you gotta have a
just
whole
got,
house.
as part of the cleanup cost, we'll get the thing filled.
Yeah, but it's Bob's guys that are gonna do the cleanup.
Well, do less of this.
I almost wish Jonathan was here, and you are, I'm sure already knows this, and you already presented your proposal for the budget committee. It's almost like there may be a time when the dust settles someday that we can get more than 12 grand, so we can do something both 1 year without having to round here and Paul and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
we could spend 12 grand every year taking down and doing things when you look around town and.
Yes, I would have to say that I'm kind of thankful for the 12 and 12, because we've never gotten that before. I think 1 year we did get as much as 15, we've had as little as 5,000 a given year. And, you know, I think if it were a question of tree plantings, we could just use our budget and go and plant trees, but all of a sudden now we're the X-Men doing the removal of these bad trees. And so that just continues the fact that the tree commission has to keep going. Once it gets these trees down, it needs to plant in the area of the tree, a new tree. So that creates another planting project that we have to do. And there's infill. There's still a few spots, and there are still some trees that died. Over in Cass, I noticed we had that one red bud. Pulled that one out already. So you get Bob the list, and he's done most of those trees already. So whether we plant another one there or not, we have to take a look at it. I first started looking at that particular spot was no, because these other trees are growing so nice and big that they're filling in. But there are trees that need to be planted in big areas, and that's something we haven't really spent the time doing inventory like we did on this stuff here. This, I think John's suggestion is a good suggestion. We need to get these out and use our money next year to get our, we don't use it. If we don't use it all in removal, what I will do, instead of making the mistake I made last year, is encumber that amount of money for tree plantings. And I can do that by getting dogwood hills out here and giving them an inventory of spots and number of trees they want to buy. And then we can preserve it into the next year, along with whatever dollars coming in.
Maybe this is too new business, if there is such a thing, and I'm not stuttering, that at a town council meeting sometime when Bob is there and all the departments are represented, what to do. I mean, eventually we're gonna have to put the bell around the cat's neck, and that's those giant silver maples that are still gonna be there, the ones we're not taking down, that are crushing sidewalks and curbs and going in the streets or on parkways that are 3 to 6 feet wide, where it isn't coming out of our budget, where it's something else, and eventually it's gonna need to be done. Or we can kind of peck away at these things, no pun intended there. But, you know, a large silver maple, the ones that are so big they're doing damage, are gonna cost a lot of money to remove. I almost wonder if that can't be addressed sometime with the street department and with the town council and with us, and saying, we've got this problem in town. I mean, the trees are growing and they're to a point now where they're not gonna get any bigger.
We made that known to the town council. They do not have a budget for that, if you're asking that question. And a lot of this stuff, what you're describing is like the third and fourth tree are exactly that. You go up on Liberty there, run over the curb and everything aside. Those, as far as I've seen, are the worst two. As far as curbs and sidewalks.
There's a few others that are about that bad on Plymouth Street next to the St. Mary's, and again, I think it's Plymouth Street, whatever it is that goes on the east side of the Catholic Church, your church.
Yeah.
There's a couple there. It'd be interesting sometime for one person or two people who wants to just go around town and try to do every street and actually count the silver maples that are to a point now where they're almost critical.
Well, that's I think what John is suggesting we have to do is that in what we're proposing here with what we know, excluding those two particular trees, and without taking the poison ivy tree back in. And that, by the way, that's another one that's right there at the curb and going at its sidewalk too. We can take the rest of our money and go around and do that for 2021. And then look at the end of 2021 whether we've accomplished our goal of getting these trees out, and so whether we plant in 2022 or whether we do more tree removal in 2022. I think at some point I'd like to do some planting because it leaves a bunch of holes in the town.
And you have people bugging you when you put trees in. I've had people bugging me because I've been doing jobs around town and they ask, can we? So eventually.
Well, and it would be nice if the budget was big enough for the town council to say, all right, we got $10 million to work with. This is going to streets, this is going to sewers, this is going to water, this is going to trees. That's just not the case. It's utopia. You know, they would sit there and listen to us, but it's priorities. And if a tree is standing up and doesn't look like it's going to fall down anytime soon, these have been sitting there for years. They probably needed to be taken down 10 years ago.
I wonder, it'd be nice to have Bob here and say, what are the costs for replacing curbs and sidewalks and even streets now? I see here.
We've got them.
Well, you have that.
Yeah, from the shared costs program.
Yeah. A foot of curb is about, I believe, Jonathan.
That's linear.
Foot of curb is about $28, Jonathan.
Gosh, I haven't looked at it this year. That sounds right, Mike.
About $28. I can tell you flat work's about $5.
What is them, sir?
Flat work. That is sidewalk.
Sidewalk itself.
Yeah.
And curbs, I think they were something in the range of $28. Now,
That's a linear cost.
the sidewalk program, though, you have to back out of there what is included, taking out the old stuff. But $5 $5 and $28 would be within a buck or two of what it is.
Is there a town policy or sort of a policy on repairing a sidewalk, replacing a section of it, the silver maple, for example, is damaged and leaving the silver maple? I mean, even if you cut some of the root out, some of it comes back. Has there been any discussion with why repair this if?
No.
Okay.
I think the answer is if you have a silver maple that's lifting the sidewalk, it's going to continue to lift the sidewalk. I don't think there's anything to do about that, other than take the tree out. And a lot of these trees were planted are not good parkway trees.
No.
And you've got some wide parkways and we've got some very narrow parkways. Like if you look at South Main Street, we've just abandoned trying to plant trees on that parkway because it's only 2 feet.
The street over, you put 4 or 5 trees that go straight up, because they only got about 1.5 feet.
And down to Davis.
Yeah.
Right, we put a couple of trees in for that fellow because he was requesting them, and they are trees that we picked that they grow linear.
Yeah.
Lineal, they don't spread out. The roots don't spread out either.
I think we talked before about this, all ideas about grants that we could use for this thing have all been looked at and exhausted, et cetera. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
We used to get grants. We got one almost every year this thing started in 2005, I believe, 4 or 5. And in the first 3-4 years, we got grants from, they all came from Alcoa, from the state of Indiana. With the recession of 8, 9, and 10, those things dried up. You can get grants to plant in certain areas, but the stuff I get over the internet would not qualify for what we want to do. We did get some trees from NIPSCO that were planted around public buildings. But the concept there was these trees would grow up to a point where they would provide shade, i.e. less energy being consumed. And
They just don't tell anybody. But it was all their people, their nursery selection of the trees and the planting in front of churches or municipal buildings. And they've done a pretty good job and they're properly located distance-wise. This to be part of the Tree City, it's a $2 per capita minimum. Is that part of that? What do you get, it's 12,000?
Right.
That's
Yep.
in that money.
yeah, that's figured in that one. We used to get that in kind volunteer. Remember when we were digging the holes and we were shoving those trees around and everything else? And then there was so much per person you could get for supervision and so much for the workers. And we used to calculate that out and send it in, and that's what helped us qualify for Tree City when we had a very low budget.
What's the chance of getting the town manager to fund some new trees out of his own pocket?
Can I hit mute on this?
Okay.
I'll plant one in my yard, but
Okay, that's a good start.
You'll add that to your list.
Yes.
Okay, well, back to the trees we have that we want to get out right away. Is there someone who will make a motion one way or the other? If there's one from or the other?
I'll make a motion that we hire Hooters to do it.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I second.
All right, I'm going to recuse myself, so I'm going to call on each individual. Dick, what's your yay or nay?
Dick is yay, right, for Hooters.
Yeah.
You guys have had some personal, I mean, we've got some recommendations from Hooters. Is that correct, from different people, you know?
Both of these.
Yeah, I know, they're both great. I'll go Hooters and I'm fine.
Ted?
Hooters.
Hooters, yeah.
Okay, it's unanimous. We'll use Hooters for this go around. By the way, this ugly truck is a good group, and I don't think we could go wrong with either one. John and I did talk about the possibility of breaking this thing up, and we decided that was not the way to go. You know, I think we've got some pretty good prices here. And I'm going to give you an example of that. That one on 461 Liberty, that's over the curb. And if you haven't got a picture of it, I've got a picture of that tree.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that thing for $13.50 is,
That's killer
that tree's
price.
100 feet high.
Mm-hmm. Killer price.
I know as an individual tree, back up at the top of Harding Court, Hooters did some work for us last year, and they charged $1,700 to do a tree that was that size. So, you know, when you're doing one tree, I think we get some pretty good prices in giving one person a shot at the whole thing. We can do the same thing next year. We can ask Aretha to give us the price, and you know, maybe the answer is switch it off. I don't know.
Some of these are big enough that they're gonna have to block off the street.
I asked Bob about that.
Yeah, so you have to do a lane or whatever.
He said, most of these guys have their own cones, and we can wane, if it was bad enough, we can block it off with horses or just cones, either one. I know Hooters carries their own cones.
National Drive will have to be blocked off.
That one at 404 Lakeshore Drive,
Yeah,
that will have to be blocked off, because that old tree is just growing over the streets. We're gonna have to do something.
Yeah, I've just said, them contact Bob or
You know, for a couple hours that day to
when,
block out.
when they're here, so we know.
Okay,
We'll work with them.
all right. Let's go on to the 2021 projects. What's your feeling about planting versus continuing what we've been doing?
my feeling is continuing on the removal and taking care of some of these younger trees that we've already planted. They need cleanup, they need new guards. And we could, you know, that's a couple $100 in material. We ought to take the time to do that and get them done. And then see where we're at when we have this, would be at 14, or we add a couple more to it, have 16 or 17, see what we got left. And I think we need an open, a little bit of an open checkbook, so to speak.
I agree. So then, are you all in favor of continuing the removal of trees from this year and going into the following year with planting? The planting would not occur until the fall, if you remember. We're not doing it in the spring.
Yeah, right.
So we could, if we had a couple of trees, you know, a load is about $8,000 worth of trees. So going to next year, we would have more money than that. So we might get a load and a half, or who knows? I don't know how they pack them in the truck or in the trailer. We'd have I think we'd have a full load of trees for 2022.
Maybe as best we can to put that emphasis on trying to clean up what we can this year and next year, and then going the year after, saying unless there's an emergency.
And what we need to do is start, as we drive around, start compiling. I've already gotten a half a dozen calls, people on my trees. And there are things that make them possible and impossible. Like State Street has a communications under the streets. They have to be careful when you plant there. But as I drive around, or as I get, you know, these requests, and I jot them down, and some of them are for people who would like to have it taken out in the parkway because it's overgrown and want to plant something else. That may be something for 2 years out.
You realize we haven't discussed the biggest downside is the continuing removal. We don't get that free lunch from Dick when Dogwood Hills comes in.
It's amazing.
We're gonna miss
get
that.
Money to do that.
So that's,
See, Dick Dennis hasn't forgotten.
We want to make a motion.
I think that's like, I
yeah.
think we're gonna find out a lot more about Hooters and all, but as we clean up, as we go, take these trees down, I don't think there's gonna be a big hole there for a week or something. I think we can learn about things going on. And maybe we'll include next time, trying to find additional bidders. Performance is good, we ought to just keep on going.
Yeah, one of the things I've learned in what we have to do in our business is if I find somebody that does the work, I don't care whether it's tree removal or does drywall or whatever it is, farting around, screwing around, messing around with getting bids from guys that are possible, are capable, maybe or not capable of the job. We had that same issue about 4 or 5 years ago. We went out and I think we got a number of bidders that come in and then one guy comes in and knocks them all out of the box. And what they told me very honestly was, don't call me to come back.
Mhm.
You know. So I think I think we've got 2 really good companies right here,
Yes.
very highly recommended. And we can decide whether we want to switch off in 1 year, one year one, and 1 year another. That's a decision we can all make. But a number of bids I'm not fond of. I think we end up with some pretty nasty people. Okay. So this probably is the last meeting for this year then, unless we have one after the trees, if he takes all the trees down early, but then I would entertain a motion for 2021 projects and spending the balance of
Second.
a motion.
The money for the.
Someone want to make a motion what to do with that extra money?
No, I was gonna interject one other thing. Where and when, I mean, when can we fit in just that $100 or so that we need for the
Do
tree
that today.
growth? That's already, okay,
Well, we'll do a motion for that.
okay.
Make a motion for that.
I'll make a motion that we save out 100 plus tax dollars for 100 feet of 4-inch corrugated. If we need the 6-inch, that's more money. We'll have to do it another year. I'm guessing we'll just go with this. I make a motion.
I want to make a motion for $150.
There you go. We'll have plenty just in case. The price has gone up of things, as you all well know lately, a $20 2x4.
That's for, what do you call
It, well, it'll well be a tree guard, but it's actually a drainage, 4-inch drainage coil, 100 feet of it.
All right, you made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we need a motion on using the balance of our 2021 funds for tree removal.
Make a motion.
I second
John made a motion.
For the 2021 expected funds from the town to be used for the remaining tree removal that we have scheduled.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, the next item is public input, but we don't have any public unless someone's on the video.
Anyone online? I see one phone number. Anybody have a comment? From the public? The only thing I'll add, oh, you have one? We're working on a couple in-depth trail projects. One of them will have some tree removals. It's the South Main and South Plymouth. It'd be on, the west side of South Plymouth, which I think are some plantings that the commission had done, basically to widen that sidewalk is what it'll be. And I think there's a couple trees there, and then there's a huge one down on South Main. We're still finalizing those plans and don't know exactly how many. We've got 3 NDOT projects, but it's at, we call it Lake Maxacucky Trail Phase 2, the one that starts at this end of the park and then goes down Plymouth and Main all the way to the cemetery. So that one will have some removals. In the past, I know those federal grants from NDOT require over a certain size that you plant something back. And we actually had a meeting with the consultants the other day, and I don't have those details of how many, but I'm expecting that from memory that some of those removals we will have to replace somewhere in that project area. So as we kind of finalize those plans between now and January, I might, if we could circulate it by email for your thoughts if there's any particular spots. So it'd be, again, kind of going from the edge of the park down Plymouth Street, then it jogs when Plymouth ends down the alley behind Main Street, then gets back on Plymouth Street, Davis, down South Main. So there are some removals that'll be required along there. I don't know how many plantings we'll have to do to replace those, whatever NDOT requires. But, you know, if there's particular spots that you have along there already that are on your list, definitely send those to me. And I will try to have some opportunity for input from you guys on that once we know what.
Actually, one of these trees is this northwest corner of Davis. No, Plymouth and Winfield. Plymouth and Winfield, I think.
Well, if, so
We got
that.
a very shallow, very narrow parkway down there.
Okay, and that's up to you guys. I mean, so I'm sure that's on the list for removal. If you think it can wait and want to save funds and use the NDOT funds, but I mean, we're fine with, you know, if you take it out now, that's fine too.
We could make that decision. I know when the engineers made that proposal for the trail, one of the things of concern that I raised was the area down in front of the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And because those are 7 or 8 trees that we put in there some years
Yeah.
ago, and they're really,
In the first planting, they've done wonderful.
they've,
And they're the right trees because you got space between them as they grow.
yeah, and there is one, you mentioned one big tree, Jonathan. I think that's the one you're concerned about.
That's the only one I can think of down by the cemetery. There's a huge one down there that I know has to come out, but I don't think there's any tree commission plantings down by the cemetery that are gonna get removed.
No, it's on South Main.
Yeah, it's on South.
Yeah,
Okay, good, because they had a very confined space in there. They had the cemetery land, and then they had our trees that we planted, and then he said he didn't think that was a problem.
Okay, can I just summarize that?
Mhm.
That you said there will be tree removals in conjunction with the NDOT projects from the park to the cemetery mainly on South Main Street.
yep. South Main and South Plymouth, I'd say. is it?
South Main.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other business? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Are you gonna call a meeting?
We can go.
And then we can start and all that stuff. We need their insurance
Yeah, I think
certificate.